Hello and welcome to Roll for Topic, a roundtable discussion about topics related to running role-playing games. I'm Chris Salzman.
And I'm Andy Rao.
Andy, so I ran a very short session about a week ago or so for my 6-year-old.
Okay.
Yeah, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about that. This was super fun. We were all sitting around at the kitchen table, and I think I'd just gotten my package from Noble Knight that included,
Ah,
T1
excellent.
and the Temple of Elemental Evil book as well. And so he was just like kind of, I was flipping through it, and like both my kids, I've got a almost 11-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they were kind of asking questions about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, and then like I don't know, it was a really delightful thing where it was like, oh yeah, like this is one of Dad's hobbies, and they were showing interest. So I was just like, I
Yeah.
was trying to relish the moment. I ended up pulling the monster manual off the shelf. I've got like the AD&D monster manual too, and so they were like flipping through that too. My 6-year-old was asking questions about it. My almost
Yeah.
11-year-old was like, oh, like like what if there's a bunch of dragons everywhere? So it was like just a really fun thing. And then I finally was just like, well, I turned to my 6-year-old. I was like, well, do you want to play? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, let's just play. Like it's not hard. I was like, go find a die. So like we have like a big like glass bowl basically full of bulk dice, which I'm sure like everybody who's listening
Yeah.
to this episode also has one of those somewhere. So he just went and grabbed, I think he got like a D10 or something. I was like, I'm not going to try to explain like the different the different
Yeah.
ones
Yeah.
here. Yeah, and so I cracked T1 open and just to the map, because he was looking at the map of the place and asking a bunch of questions and stuff. It's like, let's just like we'll play. And so I just sort of dropped him in, and like I had him like describe himself. I was like, like what kind of weapon do you want? And he's like, I want like a really big sword.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had like all sorts of stuff. And then so I just had him like going to the inn, and he met some sort of NPC. Yeah, and then I just like the NPC like said something to him, and then I was like, well, what do you say back? And he just like looked at me like, I get to decide, like I get to make the decision about like what. I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, just say it. And then so he said something, and I was like, okay, we gotta roll to see if he believes you. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, I get to roll? Like, so like, yeah.
That
Yeah,
is
so
fantastic.
yeah, so he rolled the die, and he got like high numbers. Like, oh great, like it's good. Like this guy believes you and stuff. So like we just did this kind of silly thing. I want to say I saw this on like a Matt Colville video forever ago. I was just like, okay, like you walk out and a farmer approaches you. It's like, all my sheep are lost. Like the sheep have all like
Hmm.
run out around the town. So then we just we spent probably like, I don't know, 10 minutes or so like having him run around figuring out like how he's going to catch all these sheep, and had a few dice rolls and stuff. And it was
Yep.
yeah, it was just really fun. And so we got to the end of it, and then like later on, like that day here in the evening, he's like, oh, can we play again? And I was like, yeah, I guess
Hey.
we can.
All
Yeah,
right.
so I might have gotten another one. Yeah, between my kids. But yeah, it
Hey, that's
was
fantastic.
it was really fun, and it was great because I think we had talked about in the last episode about just kind of like being a little bit more casual about gaming, like not getting too wrapped up in like, oh, I got to prep this thing, perfectly or whatever. Just kind of
Hmm.
crack it open and start playing. So I did that. Yeah, I did that with him. It was immediately frustrating because like the way that T1 is laid out is terrible. Because I was like,
Yeah.
okay, you're in the inn, it's like, and all the description about the inn is in one place, but the description about the inn never mentions the NPCs by name in the description. So I had to like flip back to like the NPC section and kind of like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just like, this kind of there's just this silly thing. But yeah, like, so I mean, but it was great because like, I mean, and he didn't care either, right? Because he's kind of sitting there
Yeah.
thinking about his character and stuff like that. So yeah, but it was really great. It was yeah, a very fun time. We haven't played since, but that's on me more than him. I think
Yeah.
he'd be very
Well,
happy.
that's awesome. I
Yeah.
want to say around 6 is probably when my kids started poking into RPGs to some
Hmm.
extent. Not in the
Yeah.
sense that like ran campaigns for them at age 6, but I started to do really simplified little role playing scenarios for them, that weren't really using any rules.
Yeah.
Um, I will say I don't think it's a big hot take to say that monster manuals and kids, man, they go together
Yeah.
amazingly.
Yeah.
Because those are the first, if you have kids and you've got, some role playing books gathering dust on your shelf, like dig through and find the monster manual or the
Hmm.
equivalent for whatever system you've got. For my oldest, when they were younger, the monster manual that they were obsessed with was it's a monster manual for Palladium Fantasy.
Okay.
which is like it was big in the 90s, not really a major force anymore, but I still have they put like sticky notes on pages that of monsters that they thought were really cool, and I have not removed the sticky notes because they ended up sticky noting like every other page, and so
Yes.
it's
Oh,
like
that's
this hilariously
wonderful.
colorful tome on the shelf that makes me smile whenever I see it. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's
man,
so good.
kids and monster manuals, just yeah,
There's something, I mean, there's something about it. I mean, it's like, well, I mean, yeah, there, it's like there's something about it that's just like so alluring, especially like, I mean, I love the art in those old books, like because it's so sort of all over the place, right? Because I think there
yeah.
was, a hand 3 or 4 different artists who were making stuff
Yeah,
like
you
this.
have
And
like these
yeah.
really nicely drawn professional ones, and then you have something that was drawn by like Gygax's nephew or
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all
Yeah.
just in the same book. Yeah,
Mhm. It's great, yeah, I mean, like, the concept of, like, having, like, a creative director or something like that over the top of everything who's setting, like, the house style that you're all drawing to, it's like, no, they're just, like, kind of, making it up as they're going along, right? And, like, I don't know, I just love it, so, like, I was flipping through that, and I did have this moment of, like, parenting where I'm like, "Oh, do I need to censor any of this stuff?" Right? Because I
yeah,
mean, it's like, it's got, like, cheesy fantasy art, so there's,
yeah,
bikini clad or, semi nude, like women
right,
in
right,
there and like some creepy looking monsters and stuff too. I'm just like, you know what, I think it's okay, like it's they'll
yeah.
probably be fine. Yeah, but
So on the topic of kids and role playing games, I should offer kind of a final update. As we've discussed on the show, my son, one of his like it wasn't like a class, but like in
oh
place of
yeah,
like study
yeah.
hall basically for this year, he's been playing in a D&D campaign run by one of his teachers with a couple
Hmm.
of other kids that were kind of my son and these other kids were kind of picked specifically because they seemed like they would gel with this sort of activity.
Hmm.
And the final like quote exam of that semester, they're playing through it's a published Wizards of the Coast campaign. It was Descent into Avernus.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I think I don't know what the teacher's plan was. They never left like the city of Baldur's Gate, which is where you get your quest at the
yeah.
beginning. So
Okay,
I think he might have just because he skipped all of they just stayed in Baldur's Gate and just played there.
okay.
Anyway, their final exam was each kid had to run the game, take it over for 1 week, and then
Hmm.
run it for the other kids.
Yeah,
And so my son spent weeks and weeks and weeks, like working on this. And I just want to say it was really interesting. Most of these kids were not like did not have much D&D experience. Like my son had probably had the most and he just played in a number of like miscellaneous games I'd run for him. He's not like a super RPGer, he enjoys it, but it's
hmm,
it's not his life in the way it was my life when I was his age. So
yeah,
it was just interesting to see that it kind of made me smile. So the kids were given pretty much free reign to like run. They just had to run D&D for a week, and it had to be I think the assignment was technically it had to be something that kind of could plausibly fit into the campaign they'd been playing in,
yeah.
although I don't think most of the kids really did that. And there were basically 2 types of game that these kids ran for a week. Like, so some kids, when told, "You're gonna run a game for a week," they went and, like, they started with creating like a world, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
so they went all the way back and like started brainstorming up I've got this world and like half of the planet is fire and the other half is, always nighttime, like
yeah, yeah,
these really big grand like setting ideas. And then they ran that for a week and they got through like half of the first fight in a week, right? You know what I
yes,
mean? Like so they
yeah.
put all this energy into like this really thought out backstory and this like world with all these cool locations and this history and stuff like that. And then the whole week was spent, fighting goblins outside the
Yes, yep,
tavern where you
yep, yeah.
uh and then I had encouraged my son not to, partly because I thought that was not the assignment, which it was not. But I
Yeah.
encouraged him. I was like, I encouraged him to make an adventure location that could be plugged into the city of Baldur's
Mhm.
Gate, which is where
Yeah,
they're adventuring. And
yeah.
so it was fun. It went well. I don't think it was like a mind blowing GMing experience for him, but
Mhm.
he, by contrast, my son produced with the help of copious like random tables and stuff. Basically, a wizard's mansion, and like you just got to, the plot was just you got to break in and steal the wizard's treasure essentially.
Yeah. Nice.
So he used a bunch of random tables to generate the like layout of the mansion, and then he flipped through the monster manual and picked out cool monsters, that he wanted to put in the wizard's
Yeah.
mansion, and it went pretty well. But anyway, I just smiled at that. I feel like I got a little insight into like how GM brain works for different people, because some
Yeah.
people, given the assignment, run D&D for a week, are like, oh man, I have to come up with like the universe, and
Hmm.
like and then other people are like, okay, there's a building next door that has a wizard in it,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, the week will be spent rummaging through the wizard's closets and basement essentially.
Yeah.
So
That's
which
so
kid
great.
would you have been? Would you have been like the, in the beginning, the great deities created the world of Garbonth,
Oh,
and or
that's
would you
a
have been, okay, you meet in a tavern and you're ambushed by goblins. Let's go.
yeah, I probably would have been the like, yeah, you're ambushed or yeah, like that that sort of thing. I don't think I would have gone to like, like build a whole world. That just yeah, wouldn't, or if I did anything like that, it'd be like, hey, we're in Redwall now. Right? It would have been
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
it would not be my original creation. It would have been definitely something whatever I had read last was
So
likely.
do you like, so this made me think of like kind of a serious jamming topic, which is like over the decades I've been in this silly hobby, I've read a million setting source books, right?
Hmm.
Like of a million fantasy settings and other settings. And a great deal of those settings, at least until the last decade or so, they will often like start with like a 50-page chapter on like the history and geography of
Hmm.
the world.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, is it useful to you as a GM to know stuff that the players will never come into contact with? So whatever, you're playing in a setting and it like half the planet's ice and the other half is fire, and the great god,
Hmm.
Mordrom, cursed the whatevers, and there's, do you like to see a timeline of like thousands of years of history of this planet
Mm,
and all of the great cataclysm of
yeah.
2032, do you like having that info, even knowing your players are unlikely to interact with it because it helps you like flesh out the setting? Or to you, is that just a lot of wasted space and all you really care about is what is in the line of sight of the players? And I realize those are two extremes and the answer is
Mhm.
probably something in between, but I want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I actually, it's just sort of for me, it's a lot more just like sort of like what's in front of the players, right? It's like if there's going to be any history, I think it needs to be grounded in the sort of like what's in front of the players, right? So it's like the village of Hamlet, I feel like is a pretty good example. Like it does start with like sort of the history of the region, right, and like how the village of Hamlet came to be, and like the only parts of that I really care about are like sort of the like why does this place I need to know like why does this place exist right now in the middle of nowhere? I
Mm,
don't really need to know like, who owned it, like or where it was settled, like, like what's sort of the ecology and like the strata if you start digging down, like, like what the different civilizations were and stuff
yeah.
like that. Cause like that to me, it's like my brain just doesn't work that way, right? Like I don't
Hmm.
hold on to history facts very well. Like that's a deficiency of my own personality. But yeah, so for me it's very much like I would rather just sort of have like, what's sort of the next thing in front of them, or like how do I like understand the stuff that's going to be happening in the campaign, less so like all the history around it.
Yeah.
It's nice to have that, but I don't need it to start with that, right?
Yeah.
Like yeah, that's not
Yeah.
not as useful.
Like I always feel when I'm reading these sections, like they're like, how is my GMing made better by this section of information?
Hmm.
And like ways in which my GMing might be better is like, okay, I now understand because of the history of how the town of Hamlet came to be. I understand that the locals are going to be, and I'm making this up, they're going to be like fiercely defensive and
Hmm.
really proud. If there's historical things that inform how the living people of the town behave, to me that's really useful information. Once you get to like 2000, once you get to like the 2000 years ago the great curse smote, you know Whatever. That's
You keep on
like
throwing out
less.
these amazing facts about this place, and I'm like, I need to know what
Yeah,
happened in
yeah,
the
that's right.
Cataclysm. I knew, yeah.
On a related question, and we can move on if you want.
Hmm.
Do you so when people are roaming through the village of Hamlet, and
Hmm.
one of your players is like, "Hey, is there a temple? Is there a temple here of the sleep god?"
Yeah.
Like, do you prefer that there is a yes or no answer to that question and it's detailed in the module because a person who is really obsessed with Hamlet thought about everything that's logically in there?
Hmm.
Or do you like make it up on the spot? Or do you throw it to the players in like sort of a modern
Mm.
story game sort of way and say, what do you, yeah, there is, tell me about the temple of the sleep god. What's your take on that?
Usually if there's no reason to say no, I'm gonna say yes, like yes to it. Like, I don't know, whatever. If like the entire town, if the whole thing is like it's, all about the god of wakefulness or something like that, and you're like, well, is there a sleep temple? It's like, no, because the whole thing is like, it's like,
Right, right.
but if it's like, it doesn't, right, it's just sort of a whatever random town, and like it doesn't really matter, and like if this matters to the character, absolutely, right. Like maybe there's a temple on the map, and like it is a temple to the god of wakefulness or whatever, but since it doesn't really matter, I'll just strike that. Now it's the god of sleep, right? It's just like, because to me, right, role playing is a lot more about the storytelling, right? Kind of that yes anding, and it's less about the like players trying to find the edges on everything of like, or like mapping out what the space is versus like the possibility space,
Hmm.
if that makes any sense, right? Because it's like the possibility space is sort of like endless. It's like, yes, if you want that temple to be there, like let's have that temple there, and then that can kind of become the shared reality of us running, Hamlet or whatever that happens to be. Yeah, unless it's like it's vitally important to some sort of plot point, right? Like, or yeah.
Yeah.
So that's usually my preference there. Yeah.
So that I think that gives us a little segue into
Hmm.
something you and I were considering talking about. And
Yeah.
it's related to Roll for Topic Con, which is
Hmm.
coming up later this year.
Yeah.
And if you remember in our last episode, we announced that the theme of Roll for Topic Con this year was going to be Wizard City.
Yes.
And we picked it mostly because that's goofy and silly and it made us smile to say.
Yeah.
But tell you have, but because you're a sicko, you have been doing
Yeah.
some work to chart out Wizard City in a more definitive way. Can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that? And then I have
Yeah.
some questions for you.
Yeah, I definitely am a sicko. I don't know. I do this, Andy. Like, you should have seen this coming, and you should have told me I'm not allowed to do this. Yeah, I
I was
have this.
trusting your wife would step in and stop this,
I mean,
but
this is I don't know. This is a total aside, and I don't know if we've talked about it in the podcast, but my wife and I have this theory, that every relationship has a dreamer and a dream crusher in it. So you need to have, and the roles can change, but usually, like, I mean, search your heart. You know who you are in the
yeah.
relationship, right? Of like, you the dreamer, or you the one who kind of like says like, that's a great idea. Tell me about the practicalities of that. So, unfortunately, when it comes to creative projects, there is no real dream crusher in our family. So
And
like,
isn't it amazing that when you ask a dreamer to explain the practicalities of it, that's the same basically as saying, no, we're not
yeah,
going to be doing
yes, yes.
this.
It's
Like,
not
is
like
that
that's a really good, like, yeah, yes, it is exactly the same thing as saying no.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. So I mean, when I told her this, she's like, this sounds like a great idea, on some level. She
Okay.
didn't tell me no.
You
Yeah.
feed
So
each other's
yeah. So I've been
flaws. Yeah.
working on, right. So like we have, right. So Wizard City, obviously, right? Like, I mean, we need to know what this place is. So I've been working on the side, call it a I'm going to call it like a game slash, web app for actually like building out the map itself. So uh, I'm not ready to tell you where you can go to see this. Although
Yeah.
when it is, I will I will tell everybody about it. But so what I'm trying to do is create sort of like a way for people to collaboratively work on a map in real time. So
Hmm.
think like a Google Docs style setup for making a map, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I'm thinking the idea behind it is going to be like this, somewhat low res. Think like more like ASCII art, like
Hmm.
rogue, like a mud style maps, rather than like something like highly detailed. Yeah, so I'm trying to right now. I'm sort of deep in the like the annoying part about programming, which is like all the infrastructure stuff. So making sure that like I can deploy the thing, and stuff goes out, and I'm connected to the database, and like all that sort of stuff before I can really dive into like all the other parts and pieces about it. But it has me thinking a lot about like both two things about like so like what's important to sort of show on a map, like so that's a big important part about it, but then also like kind of the game design of this as well. So if you're going to have a collaborative sort of like setup like this, I do think it behooves you to have some like some rules and restrictions and stuff such that there's like some mechanics that make it more fun to engage with, right? So what I
Hmm.
don't want to happen is we hit launch on this thing, the first person who gets in there just fills up the map with whatever they want, and then no one else can do anything, right?
Hmm.
Right. So like I'm starting to think through like, okay, well, how do you design this from like a game design perspective? So like I've made a bunch of video games. It's still something that I want to get back to, right? Obviously we play tabletop games, all the time. I've designed a lot of games, like anytime we talk about games that I'm running, I'm always like making little like mini games that I don't need to, like
Yeah.
for it. So like game design is something that like I do think about, and I like quite a bit. Yeah. So like I'm trying to think through some stuff, and so like just like there's like handful of things, and we don't have to talk too much about the game design, but like there's a few things that I'm thinking about, like like these like daily games that people play, like Wordle or
Hmm.
you know connections on New York Times, stuff like that. I really like the idea of when you come to the map, you only have a certain number of actions that you can take per day, right? Like so maybe you can create 4 buildings, and you can destroy a building, right? That's on the map, like kind of having some stuff like that, or whatever. You can only name a handful of things, or hey, like today on Tuesdays, Tuesdays are the only day that you can define where magic items are or something, right? Like so there's like all these like little things that I'm starting to think through about how do we make this so this is a fun thing that we can kind of build together on the lead up to the convention, and then at the con we print it out, right? And put it up
Hmm.
put it up on the wall, right? And so we have our wizard city when we get there. So like that's what I'm starting to think through. I'm probably a couple weeks away from having anything to really share publicly there, but it's like yeah, it's in process, and it is going to happen. So yeah.
So the purpose of mapping out with Wizard City would be to present a gameable location, right? S-
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if it's present a gameable location more as to have like an artifact from the con, right? Of like,
Okay.
oh, this was like this fun thing that we put together. But I mean, it does very much lead into okay, cool. So we're gonna do all this work. It's like why, like what would we need to do to make sure that this would could be a gameable setting, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there anything that we can do to make this a gameable setting?
What does make a gameable city in your mind? Like, so I noticed you
Yeah.
didn't mention anything about like maybe so you weren't asking questions of like when was Wizard City founded?
Hmm.
Like who was the first king of Wizard City? That
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Is history so important to a gameable location that you it needs to be there, or
Mhm.
is it something that you prefer to let a GM invent as needed to support their own campaign?
It's a good question, right? So I think like some of that, yeah, some of that I do want to have. Like I do think I want to have, some element of history, right? So like I mentioned, like having an ability to destroy something, right? I'd love to have like, I don't know, one spot on there that keeps on getting destroyed and built, right? And so like
Hmm.
when you go to check in on it, you can see that there is like this depth of like stuff that has happened here,
Yeah.
right? And like so there's ways to do that, and we have to think through it. I mean, I think for me, like whenever I look at like a fantasy map, like it is, the history again, like I think this goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. Like the history is important, but it's also sort of like it's the reality of like what it is right now that's almost more important to like what the characters are doing in that moment. So like for me, like a good fantasy map or a map in a TTRPG is one that is evocative enough to make players want to go like I need to go see happening there, right? Like I need to
Yeah.
go to that place. Like something about that place is like, oh, that is really cool. We need to go explore.
Yeah, my mind did go to video game maps.
Hmm.
If you think of like the map of Elden Ring or Breath
Hmm.
of the Wild,
Yeah.
one of the things that makes those a joy to like look at and then live in is that sense of like those maps are full of stuff you want to go check out and see what
Yes.
is down there. And there's
Yes.
always some when you get there, there's always something interesting there. And
Yeah.
um that's not like I mean, when I run fantasy RPGs, they're usually kind of quest oriented, right? And so you're usually going or you're following clues or you're following a trail kind of along the quest. And there might be room for side treks here and there, and it might not be entirely linear. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, when I'm running games, there's usually not a lot of like, okay, here's the map of Baldur's Gate, and someone goes, "What is that?" and points to
Mm.
a spot off in the corner and like
Yeah.
we want to go check out what that is. But
Yeah.
that's not I do think that there is that is a part of like role playing history. I do not think if you look at like the way that kind of published adventures tend to be made these days, there is a whole lot of that in
Mhm.
it, is
Yeah.
that your experience?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I mean, I don't know, like the Village of Hamlet, right? Like, so, like I mentioned, playing with my 6-year-old, he's just like looking at the map and asking questions about it too, right? And it's like, and he's trying to figure out what was he doing. There's like a legend in it that like kind of shows, different like this is a fenced off area, right? So he's like
Hmm.
he sees like, oh, there are, and he can't read, so he's asking me what that says. I'm like, oh, that means like, there's a fence there. And so then he's like poring over the map to try to figure out like where all the fences are, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, like that to him, like this is like a fun part about it, is like, okay, like I'm in this place, like now I get to kind of like discover discover what it is. Yeah, discover what it is by like, looking at this thing, and also like to kind of orient myself too to this space as well. So I mean, I think it is somewhat, I don't know, like the games I played, I think I have usually thrown like a town map down or
Hmm.
something like that. But like I do think there is something about like the video game style map that just like continually leads you down that path of like, oh, I want to go see what's over that next hill. Like
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild is like, I've only ever played it a little bit, but it was that experience of just like, oh, there's a shrine over there, like I gotta go get to that. Oh, there's another one over there. Like,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you're like, I don't know where I am in the world. I've been running around for an hour, right? Elden Ring the same way. But like because it's a video game, I think that it can kind of do a little bit better a job of having something always sort of there for you to explore when you
Hmm.
get there. Where I do think that's a little bit harder to pull off in a TTRPG, at least in the way that they're written, commonly written, right?
Yeah.
Like, because yeah, if you had a hex, hex map where it's just like, oh well, if they decide to go to this hex, roll a d20 and see what's there, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like yeah, that's a different kind of like mentality about a map, I think, than maybe like what a video game's trying to
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
And, I mean, a lot of it is tied to the premise of your campaign. Like, the older school you get, the more you do get of like, here's a hex map of the Southlands. The PC's job is to just to be roaming adventurers, right? So it
Hmm.
like kind of makes sense that they're just like, okay, let's go to this hex over here. It looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then you're rolling random stuff along the way. That is an old school way. It is harder, I think, in a lot of the way a lot of modern games and like modern D&D is set up. Your characters usually have some motivation that's different from like I'm my job is to roam around and like poke into weird corners of places in search of monsters and the treasure,
Yes. Yeah.
um so what questions do you like if you're sitting down to make a map of a city of Wizard City or whatever yourself, like,
Hmm.
and you're making a district of Wizard City, what do you need to put in there and what are you happy leaving to like come up with on the fly or roll randomly or toss to the players to invent?
Hmm.
So like you've made the like the silver quarter
Yeah.
of Wizard City, whatever that is. Like, right, what needs to be in there to give you enough to work with?
Yeah.
Understanding that it's not going to be like a whole tourist guide to the every nook and cranny of it. Well,
Yeah.
what has to be there?
Yeah, I think what has to be there is, people to interact with. I think that's kind of the main thing, right? So I think like people, buildings, like any sort of interesting non-standard items, right? So it's like, if there's stores, they have whatever the standard adventuring gear is, but is there anything unique to that store, right? Or like unique
Yeah.
to that in, those sorts of like little details of like, oh, like this is something that has been sort of thought about by the person who's describing this space. So when you get there, you enter the inn and they're like, oh, like, I don't know, whatever. Like the only beds they have here are hammocks, or I don't know, like whatever like small detail there is to kind of make the place more interesting,
Yeah.
that diverges from sort of like the mean of what you sort of think about when I've entered a fantasy inn. This is what I expect. Like, what's going to be the kind of the difference, the
Yeah.
differences there. Yeah, it's like those are the things I'm looking for, and then any kind of plot hooks too, right? It's just like I don't know, right? Like, and those are usually going to be tied to NPCs that are roaming around as well. It's like, oh, this NPC like, needs this thing or is related to this other person and this other, part of the district. Like those sorts of connection points. Yeah. I guess yeah, what about
Yeah.
you? Yeah. What
Well, I think so. I agree with all that. I also look to like environmental things that make it stand out. Again, not to
Mhm.
keep going back to video games, but
Yeah.
like video games often do this well. To me, saying this is whatever in the Silver District, it's all mud due to some
Yes.
whatever, due to
Yeah.
like the nearby river. This district is just like all mud. Like, or this district is massively patrolled by the King's Guard and
Yeah.
like, with curfews and stuff like that. I look for things that can be wherever they're going in the district, whatever they're doing. I look for things that will be true, like environmental things that will make over time will make that district like be memorable,
Mhm.
not because of the exact location they went to, which might have been a fairly generic fantasy tavern where they met some fairly generic fantasy quest givers or whatever like that. But I think like, oh yeah, and it's hailing constantly
Yes.
here,
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
smell of baked bread is overpowering. Like those are details you can insert no matter what they're doing and no matter where they're going in that
Mhm.
space. And I like that sort of thing. Like
Mhm.
it makes me think, like video games where like, oh, everyone in this town is like is like really small, or
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Uh like, is it realistic? Not like exactly, but or
Yeah.
like if you think like Star Wars does this with like,
Yeah.
this is the planet where it's like always icy and this is the
Yes.
planet where it's always desert or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you can have any kind of adventure in those locations, and but then you have a little bit of like GM fuel for
Mhm.
like flavor
Yeah.
that you can add. So
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. Yeah, I mean, especially I'm thinking about like with Wizard City in particular. It's like I don't know, whatever. Like this whole region is cursed with it always smelling like bread everywhere. Even though like everybody's gluten free or I don't know, like whatever. Like I mean, you can really kind of play with that. But yeah, having those details I think is super important. Yeah, I'm thinking about like I don't know, like going back a little bit in our conversation, and then also you're thinking about this too. When I first moved to Ann Arbor, where I live right now, the thing that struck me immediately upon like arriving to town when I lived here was just like how the town itself had almost like its own colors,
mm,
because like so the University of Michigan is here, right? So like I think it was on a game days when I moved too. Like so everybody is wearing maize and blue, right? Like and
oh
it's
yeah,
just like it just like infused the town, right? It's like if you didn't have a strong reason to have picked a color otherwise, you just defaulted to maize and blue everywhere. So, billboards, signage, people, their shirts they're wearing, like just everything just kind of around. It's just like that. And like it was the sort of thing where like that was so immediately apparent to me. And it's something like where like once you start living here for a while, it just sort of like it becomes background noise until you go
yeah,
somewhere else and you're like, oh right, like not everybody is a University of Michigan, football fan or whatever here. Yeah, but I mean that's the sort of detail where like I mean right, like if you're describing the town and you're trying to describe this town in like a TTRPG way, I think that's the thing you like you
yeah,
mentioned
yeah,
almost first is like in this town everybody roots for the local football team, right,
yeah.
and like the colors are this, right, so like these colors
Everyone's
are
wearing
infused.
red scarves.
Yeah,
It's
right, and
just
it's like
yeah.
what's the deal with that? Oh, it's because they really love the red scarf cult or football team or whatever that is. Yeah.
Yeah, when I think about the places I've lived, like I used to live in a town on the Michigan coast that was near a paper mill. And
Yeah.
like the town is interesting. If you were like, tell me what it was like to live in this town, I mean, I could tell you about some of the buildings that were there and stuff like that. But what I'm mostly like to tell you is like, anytime the wind is going the wrong direction, you get the horrid stench off of the like, the
Yep.
paper
Yeah,
mills or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
I was playing the video game Starfield recently, and there's like a underground mining colony on Mars that you can go to. And because it's like a mining colony, every couple minutes, like some distant like mining machinery blasts, and like there's this like earthquake and dust goes everywhere, and like a person on the PA is like mining commencing,
Yeah, yeah,
please secure yourself or something like that. It doesn't affect anything that you're doing because you're just running around shooting bad guys in this place. But like,
yeah, yeah.
I remember that, oh yeah, that's the place where like it's constantly earthquaking, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just details like that. So
Yeah, no, there's something to it. I was talking with a coworker yesterday who mentioned in Japan, at least, where they've stayed in Tokyo a couple times, but like all of the subway stops have a different chime that sounds like a different
oh
little like musical chime, right? So like you can kind of orient yourself like by like the little musical
yeah.
chimes and stuff that are happening, right? So like if you fall asleep, like like your body will sort of naturally awake when
Oh,
you'll wake up
interesting.
when you hear it. It's like, I mean, I would talk about environmental storytelling, like, but also
Yeah.
like just like a general like that's a really good idea. Yeah. I mean, so I mean there's all sorts of senses you can play with, right? Yeah, senses too that you can play with for how you describe a place that I think really can kind of grab a player and get them invested in it too. So
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
Okay,
Well,
well,
we
hey,
need
we
to
need
wrap
to
up.
wrap
Yep.
up.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
So, any important info you need to convey?
Nope. Just we continue to be planning for Roll for Topicon. So like if you're planning on coming, obviously join us in the Discord or reach out otherwise, and we will make sure that you are kept updated on what's happening. Yeah, and then yeah, more to come on this little side project for Wizard City.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm hoping to have something very public in the next kind of middle of the month or so. But yeah.
sounds great.
Cool. All right. Well, that does it for us. If you want to catch more of Andy, you can hear him and John Corey on Zombie Strains, where they continue to review zombie movies. John mentioned that he's probably going to go see his Obsession is kind of the latest like scary horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, out there. He's going to go see that soon. Like, I mean, so Andy and John like actually love horror movies. I've been told that like I'm not even allowed to watch the trailer for Obsession. So, yeah. But yeah. Anyway, you can go check them out. They're talking about zombie movies every week. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's good. Yep. So again, we've been Roll for Topic, and I'm Chris Salzman.
I've been Andy Rowe.
Remember, if your player's having fun, you're a great GM.